Israel has struck Iran again. And no, I'm not talking about yesterday's early morning attack. I'm talking about the ones that have happened since then. Attacks like this one.
Israel's military said Friday afternoon that it was striking Iran again after 5 rounds of strikes in the early morning local time.
Yes, events are unfolding at a breakneck pace, and this time they don't seem like mere warnings.
As expected, Iran has responded by launching several volleys of missiles across all of Israel. The footage is striking, especially the images of missiles falling on Tel Aviv. Although the scenes are intense, the truth is that the damage so far has been very limited. Up to now, the Ayatollahs are responding with the brakes on. In any case, this has been enough for Israel to announce new operations in response.
According to the information being shared, Israel's latest strikes are targeting Iranian missile storage and launch sites. In other words, we're witnessing a massive operation aimed at crippling the regime's military capabilities. Not just the nuclear program, but also its conventional deterrence. In other words, its missiles. VisualPolitik community, this time we're not talking about warning shots. Israel's attack has been massive and decisive. And it comes after days of escalating tension between Iran, Israel, and the United States. Threats, troop movements, diplomatic evacuations, all kinds of warnings. What we haven't yet told you is what this Israeli action could mean for the region, for the Middle East. The strikes are proving successful, and Israel is scoring a major win. Why do I say that? Let me be crystal clear. Jerusalem's blow to Iran's nuclear program is a gift to the rest of the planet. That simple, that clear. A radical, theocratic regime like this one, which promotes terrorism across the Middle East, getting its hands on the atomic bomb was an unacceptable risk, not just for the state of Israel, but probably for all of humanity. And of course, we can't forget what's happened recently. In less than 2 years, Israel has cornered Hamas, dismantled Hezbollah, helped spark a regime shift in Syria to some extent, and now they've gone straight for the heart of the Ayatollah's power. And they're destroying what is practically their only remaining card to stay influential and feared. Because let's face it, getting the atomic bomb would seriously boost their power. It would shield them against almost any external intervention. The risk would be enormous. And that's not just a blessing for Israel. As I said, it's a blessing for the rest of the world, especially for the Saudis. Even if they publicly condemn the attack, I'm convinced they're rubbing their hands with glee behind the scenes. Let's be honest, with this bold and ambitious move, Netanyahu's government has made it absolutely clear they will not tolerate Iran getting a nuclear bomb under any circumstances. And of course, this has consequences for the balance of power in the Middle East, for Iran's future, for Trump's foreign policy, which has just been blown apart, and even for oil prices. That's why, in this video, we're going to explore what scenarios are opening up now, beyond just Israel and Iran, and who stands to gain or lose the most from everything that's unfolding. And by the way, if you want to stay on top of breaking news like this, don't forget to subscribe to VisualPolitik. As crazy as it sounds, half of you watching us still haven't subscribed. And come on, it only takes a second. So 1 click and you're done. What do you say? Will you join us? Go ahead and click. Also, thank you everyone for your patience. I am back on the channel. I just needed a quick week off to look after a new baby girl who we've just welcomed into the world. Thank you, Andy, for looking after the channel for the last week. That said, pay close attention to everything we're about to tell you. You're going to understand many key aspects of what's happening and what might happen next. But before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you heard of the 14 Eyes Alliance? It's an international agreement between countries like the US, UK, Canada, Germany, and others, allowing their governments to collect and share internet user data with each other. In simple terms, your online activity can be monitored without your knowledge and potentially used against you. So, is there a way to avoid this kind of surveillance? Yes, by using a VPN, but not just any VPN. You need one that's reliable, secure, and based outside the 14 Eyes Alliance. That's where CyberGhost VPN comes in. CyberGhost is the ultimate tool for protecting your privacy online, not just from governments, but also from hackers and cybercriminals. It's headquartered outside the 14 Eyes countries, and unlike many VPNs, it actually keeps no logs of your activity. So just open CyberGhost VPN before you browse, and no one will be able to track your online activity. You get full privacy. It's fast, it's super easy to use, it's trusted by over 38 million users, and has an excellent rating on Trustpilot. Plus, it blocks ads and malware, while still giving you all the classic VPN perks, like bypassing geo-restrictions on streaming platforms or accessing websites blocked by governments. And here's the best part. By using the link in the description, you are getting a special offer. It's just €2.03 a month, and you can connect up to 7 devices. If you share your account with friends or family, that's basically 30 cents per person for full online privacy? That's not bad for less than the price of a coffee, right? If you want to try CyberGhost and support our channel at the same time, we'd really appreciate it. Just use the QR code on the screen or the link in the description, and don't worry, there is a 45-day money-back guarantee. So if it's not for you, no problem. You've got nothing to lose by giving it a shot. Just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below.
A shift in the deck.
The Iranian regime has announced on state television that it is suspending, for now, its participation in nuclear negotiations with the United States, starting with the summit they were planning to hold this coming Sunday in Oman. And honestly, this couldn't be better news for Netanyahu. In Jerusalem, they were terrified of Trump's taco style. You know, Trump always chickens out. Basically, he always ends up backing down, giving in. And that's not even mentioning how in most of his negotiations, the bad guys usually come out ahead. The worse the dictator, the more they get out of Trump. The art of the deal, you know, an art that Benjamin Netanyahu clearly doesn't trust one bit. In any case, the truth is that this Israeli strike brings several consequences. Specifically, we can point to at least 3 major key points regarding what we can expect from now on. And the first thing, absolutely the first, is this. Do you know who 2 of the biggest winners of the night are? Any guesses? No, this time I'm not talking about Israel or the United States or anything like that. In this case, I'm talking about the United Arab Emirates, and especially Saudi Arabia. Now, these countries have officially condemned the action. In fact, the Saudi Foreign Ministry has described it as nothing less than a blatant violation of international laws and norms. They also said that Iranians are their brothers. But as the saying goes, actions speak louder than words. Or in other words, not even they believe what they're saying. This is probably one of the most hypocritical statements we've seen in a very, very long time. Because we are absolutely convinced that right now, Mohammed bin Salman is rubbing his hands together and probably saying out loud, these Jews are amazing. But you know, if they didn't publicly condemn the attack, they'd look like accomplices. And appearing to be Israel's accomplice is the last thing they want in Riyadh right now, especially after everything Israel is doing in Gaza. But why do we say Mohammed bin Salman is rubbing his hands together? Well, there are more than enough reasons. On the one hand, the partial destruction of Iran's Natanz nuclear infrastructure and the loss of several senior Iranian military leaders significantly reduces the threat that Iran ultimately represents. Now, thanks to Israel, Iran's position is much more fragile. Its nuclear program is blowing up. Its missile system is also taking heavy damage, and even its air defenses are being wiped out. It's all good news for Riyadh. Here at VisualPolitik, we've talked many times about the intense rivalry between these two countries. It's a rivalry with 2 dimensions. Their influence across the region they both share, and a purely sectarian conflict as well. Saudi Arabia is the standard bearer of Sunni Islam, while Iran is the leader of Shia Islam. We're talking about the 2 main branches of Islam, constantly at odds with each other. Well, Riyadh has been worried for years about Iran's expansionist ambitions in the region, especially in Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria. In fact, in Syria, the fall of the al-Assad regime and the rise of Ahmed al-Sharaa probably wouldn't have happened without the Israeli attacks on Assad's forces. Those were the same forces that spent years giving military support to Hezbollah, a terrorist group that was constantly attacking Israel from Lebanon. Syria served as a transit point for weapons and money coming directly from Iran in an alliance that seemed unbreakable until the regime fell. But now, that's all history. And do you know who Syria's new best friend is? Exactly, Saudi Arabia. And that's not even all. The Saudis and the Israelis also share another common enemy, the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And that, without a doubt, is another major reason why, in Riyadh, they're almost certainly dancing the traditional Bedouin war dance right now. Because we're talking about a Yemeni militia that's been at war with Saudi Arabia for years. A militia that's armed and funded by Iran, and which, as I said, is also a sworn enemy of Israel. In fact, many of the drone and missile attacks against the state of Israel in recent months have come from Yemen. And of course, don't think for a second that the Israelis have just stood by doing nothing.
Israeli Navy strikes Houthi-controlled port city of Hudaydah.
The thing is, the Houthis, besides attacking Israel, also fire on Saudi Arabia from time to time. For example, in September 2019, the Houthis launched drone and cruise missile attacks on the oil facilities that Saudi Aramco operates in Abqaiq and Khurais. This attack temporarily cut Saudi oil production in half, affecting roughly 5% of the world's crude supply. And in fact, even though the Houthis carried out the attack, attack, both the Saudis and the United States blamed Iran because the weapons used were Iranian. Another example was the attack in February 2022 when the Houthis targeted Abha Airport in Saudi Arabia, injuring at least 12 people. Those are just two examples, but the list goes on. So, sidelining Iran and reducing its capacity to arm itself and its militias is a win for the Saudis, no matter how you look at it. So with all this, do you really think Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries in the region are upset about Israel's recent actions? Come on, no one believes that. Not even someone high on potato juice. Israel is knocking out the Ayatollahs, and Riyadh hasn't even had to get its hands dirty. They can even keep pushing the whole narrative about easing tensions, like when they reopened their embassy in Iran in 2023 with China's mediation. They can keep playing that game while quietly enjoying the sweet taste of success. Now, of course, there's a risk that Iran, or rather the Ayatollah regime, might decide to self-destruct by attacking Saudi oil fields. And that, of course, would force the United States, other Arab countries, and the international community to intervene and take down the Iranian regime completely. But even that scenario, thanks to Israel and Mossad, is looking less and less likely. Remember we told you that Israel's latest attacks are targeting Iran's missile system? Well, that's why. And that's still not all. Since we're talking about oil, here's the cherry on top. The Saudis and the rest of the region's monarchies are about to cash in big time, because right after the attack, this happened.
Oil jumps almost 7% after Israel strikes on Iran.
And that's just in the last few hours. With all the tension building over recent days from the threat of an attack that finally materialized, the price of crude has shot up by nearly $10 per barrel. Now look, it's probably just temporary, just for as long as the tensions with Iran last, but hey, that's still a pretty nice windfall. Of course, it all depends on how things play out. Let me explain. While the eyes of almost the entire world are fixed on Israel's attacks, all the attention from investors and energy experts is focused elsewhere. Or more precisely, on three places: Saudi oil fields, the Strait of Hormuz, and Kharg Island. Because if the conflict spreads, the Iranian regime might feel so cornered that it could try to retaliate. First, through what would be, as I said earlier, practically a declaration of self-destruction, launching a missile barrage against Saudi Arabia's oil fields. That's why Riyadh has to publicly condemn Israel's attack 3 times for every bottle they pop open in private. The second option, the Strait of Hormuz, wouldn't be good either, although it might make more strategic sense. I mean, trying to block or disrupt passage through that narrow corridor, which handles a significant portion of the world's traded oil. Obviously, both of these moves would be bad news for Riyadh. It's the price they have to pay. But the third option, that one, could be different. If the conflict escalates, Israel might be tempted to eliminate the Ayatollah's capabilities once and for all. How? By attacking the island you see on screen. This island in the Persian Gulf houses Iran's most important oil export terminal. It's a massive facility, and around 90% of Iran's oil exports pass through it every day. If this terminal were destroyed, Israel, or any Western power, could, overnight, sign the death sentence of the Ayatollah regime. Of course, that would dramatically increase the risk of the regime launching a suicide response. But if that's avoided, the dollars would rain down once again over the skies of Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Kuwait, and other oil giants in the region. Keep in mind, Iran has faced a ton of international sanctions, and yet it still manages to sell millions of barrels to the rest of the world, especially China. And if that supply vanished, the price of Brent crude would likely surge past $85 per barrel, compared to the $65 it was trading at before the tensions began. That wouldn't be a bad outcome for the Arab oil countries. These are the main reasons why oil prices have skyrocketed. And they're also the reasons why, even while condemning the attacks, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are rubbing their hands. Yes, there are risks, but the potential benefits are much greater. But now, let's move on to the second key point in this story, which of course is Iran's possible response.
Iran has responded. It has done so by launching multiple waves of missiles against Israel, particularly targeting Tel Aviv. The missiles have caused some material damage, but despite the dramatic footage we've seen, the action has been limited. That's why the world is now wondering whether this will be the end of it, or if the Ayatollahs will indeed follow through on their promise of revenge.
And the question is, what could this vendetta look like? We've covered this in tons of videos. Essentially, Iran has only 2 real ways to threaten the rest of the world in general, and Israel in particular. One is through its militias and armed terrorists terrorist proxies. The problem, Israel has hit them so hard over the past 2 years that most are practically out of action, which brings us to the other option, a massive ballistic missile attack, either against Israel, trying to inflict maximum damage, or against Saudi oil fields. According to US estimates prior to the Israeli strikes, the Ayatollah regime had more than 3,000 ballistic missiles, meaning they could, in theory, launch a devastating, hard-to-stop attack by sheer volume. Yes, the vast majority of missiles would likely be intercepted. We've already seen the Israelis do that, but the few that get through would be enough to cause heavy casualties in densely populated Israeli cities or hit infrastructure. Of course, the problem with this kind of warfare is that it's all or nothing. 3,000 ballistic missiles is a lot, but it's not nearly enough to win a war against an enemy as well equipped as Israel's. And on top of that, as we said, it would basically be signing their own death warrant. So, is there an alternative? Well, yes. There are a few. Perhaps the most promising one would be to try, by any means, through missiles or militias, to attack the offshore gas fields along Israel's coast, which are the backbone of the country's energy supply. It wouldn't be easy, but the risk does exist. Just take a look at this chart. What you're seeing here is the stock price of Energian on the London Stock Exchange. And what is Energian? Well, it's an energy company headquartered in London, and its main business is exploiting natural gas fields off the coast of Israel. So, as you can see, over the past month, its share price has dropped by nearly 14%, as fears surrounding this conflict have grown. Just since the Israeli strikes began, its stock has fallen by as much as 7%. And this is also one of the reasons Israel's attacks continue, especially against Iran's missile systems. To sum up, Iran's response is what will determine whether this conflict continues or not. If they hold back, and Israel considers the nuclear program sufficiently disrupted for the foreseeable future, then all this could soon be behind us. But to understand the third major key to everything that's going on, we need to head to Washington. Pay close attention, because this might just surprise you. Remember earlier we told you that Netanyahu's government didn't want a deal between Tehran and Washington because they don't trust the Ayatollahs? Well, while that's true, there's also another part of the story. They don't trust Trump either. The White House had been betting on a negotiated solution, even behind Jerusalem's back. And to top it off, it came out that they had been holding talks with Hamas in Qatar. In fact, there were strong rumors that during his Middle East tour this past May, Trump was planning to announce a major deal with Hamas for the release of hostages. And guess what suddenly happened? Out of nowhere, Netanyahu launched a ground offensive in Gaza, which, of course, completely derailed that announcement. Things have since cooled down, and the fact that Trump visited Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar during his trip, but didn't set foot in Israel, could be seen as a sign of that rift. And now, Israel's strike seems like yet another poke in Trump's eye. A Trump who, just hours before the attack, was still publicly saying that his strategy was a diplomatic solution. The White House wanted a deal, a political agreement that basically offered immediate economic relief to Iran in exchange for freezing the military part of its nuclear program. We're talking about unfreezing assets, letting them back into the international banking system, and giving them permission to sell oil freely, which, let's be honest, probably didn't thrill Saudi Arabia either. In fact, a US delegation led by Trump's friend and special envoy, Steve Witkoff, was supposed to meet with the Iranian government in Amman this very Sunday. Everything was ready, and the announcement of a deal was looking more and more likely. And of course, in Israel, they couldn't believe it. Like, really? You're going to trust the Ayatollahs? And in exchange for them pausing their nuclear weapons program temporarily, we're going to help them make money and strengthen their political and military position? In Jerusalem, they must have thought, what kind of joke is this? A full-on Operation Taco? After everything, this is where we've ended up. So in the end, Netanyahu said, that's it, enough nonsense, and launched the strike. You know how it goes, said and done. That's how the Israelis are. And to be clear, the US government itself has been insisting that this was a unilateral operation by Netanyahu, and that Washington was only informed hours before it happened. Although, afterward, Trump tried to take credit, claiming he knew, and hinting that it was all part of the plan. Of course, it wasn't. The result? This operation has marked the end of the Israeli right wing's honeymoon with Trumpism. And not just that, it also seems like a response to yet another chilling taco case from the current US president. But of course, even though folks in Washington may think they control everything, everything. Reality, as you can see, is very different. VisualPolitik community, these are the 3 big keys that will shape what we're going to see over the coming weeks. But for now, the question is for you. What do you think of Israel's operation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and let's open up the debate. And once again, a big thank you to CyberGhost for sponsoring this video. For just €2.03 a month, you get full protection for your data and unrestricted access to blocked content around the world. Remember, you can try it completely risk-free thanks to their 45-day money-back guarantee. And by signing up, you're also helping support our content. And don't forget to subscribe to VisualPolitik and hit the like button if you found this video interesting. Thank you so much for being here. See you next time.